So our new motto during the last year and a half is that we are a digital toolkit for wine professionals. There's a theory talking about purple people. And the notion is that red is technology and blue is business, or the other way around. But you always have those two extremes. And you have some people, they're usually few and far in between, that can actually live among both clans, right? And the combination of red and blue is purple. So I'm a purple person. That's what I do. I mean, one of the things that I've understood and learned, let's say, through several experiences in the past is that you cannot preempt a market. The market is either there or not. What you can do is, if you have enough money, to gradually build the market. But if the market is not there, you will not be able to magically preempt it.
Welcome to the Startup Greece Talks. On this episode, I'm going to welcome Elias Gagas, co-founder of OENsights. So, Elias, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tano, for having me.
What a pleasure having you today. So, too much experience. You're bringing us too much experience. And we love to hear about wine, insights, and this combination. But before that, let's start with some small, quick questions in order to understand who are you and what brings you here. So I'm going to start with quick questions. So you choose one answer and let's start. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Let's go. So coffee or tea?
Tea.
Morning or night?
Morning.
Android or iOS?
Android.
Okay, you're pure on what you're doing. I like it because, you know, the majority of the young generation, they love iOS. So if you are...
Well, never jumped on that bandwagon. So
Okay.
Fortunately or not, never used sort of the whole, iOS and Apple ecosystem.
Okay. Rosé or white or red, maybe? Wine.
Red.
Red. Slack or Teams?
Slack.
Slack.
Yeah.
Okay. Agile or Scrum?
Oh, this is the one that I'm not going to give a single answer to. So neither one works on its own. That's a quick answer. I find that especially on the project management level, you need to have a good balance of any one of the new, let's say, age frameworks you want to use. But at the same time, to keep your head balanced, you need to employ some of the good old-fashioned models, right? So you need a Gantt chart. You need to have some sort of way to sort of stand back and glimpse at the big picture.
Okay, great. So let's jump on the picture of Elias. Who are you?
Well, I usually give two descriptions of myself.
Let's do it.
So the first one is that I'm heavily mutated computer scientist. I no longer write code, so that's out of the, let's say, of the window. But I'm still heavily affected by the fact that I purely love computer science and what it entails. So that's one, of the main things. The second that I usually use to describe myself is that I'm a translator. That's what I do for a living.
Really?
So, yeah, for a good number of decades now, I translate between business and technology.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah. That's that's the way to, let's say, translate or to explain what is the real scientist, computer scientist doing. Translate the word of business.
Correct. I mean, there's room for all facets in an organization.
Of course.
Actually, one of the, let's say, things that kept me at peace a couple of years ago is when I found out there is sort of a theory behind that. There's a theory talking about purple people. And the notion is that red is technology and blue is business, or the other way around. But you always have those two extremes. And you have some people, they're usually few and far in between, that can actually live among both clans, right? And the combination of red and blue is purple. So I'm a purple person. That's what I do.
Okay, great. So, as we said before, you are here and you are running. You are part of a team. and the team is working on an industry that it's one of the most traditional and one of the old business
Correct.
side. How it comes with insights and how it comes to life on these ages. Of course, we know that everything is data from that side, but the other side is one of the most traditional, let's say, businesses.
Correct. I mean, to some extent, that was sort of the initiating factor for us on several fronts, right? On one end, sort of the original team of 3 people had skill set on technology, digital entrepreneurship, but at the same time, we have a member who is fully knowledgeable on the wine industry, dealing mainly on the commercial level of things, not so much on the production, but very knowledgeable of the business. The second was that once we started diving deeper into what the wine industry is all about, we figured out that indeed this is a traditional business, with ages and ages of past experience on several fronts, but not necessarily adopting the latest trends of digitalization, however you want to call it. So we effectively found a gap. And, gaps are nice. If you find a gap that has a substantial market behind it, it's usually a good sign that you can start something new. You found something that is missing, and potentially you can come in with your team and create a solution for it. So that was sort of the initial story of Insights.
So what you're doing?
Well, we're already transitioning what we're doing. So when we got started, our motto was that Insights provides actionable insights for the wine industry. And effectively, Insights started out as a business intelligence platform, an additional tool to assist winemakers in better understanding their position in the digital wine ecosystem, be informed about what happens, and make proper decisions based on that information. Inevitably, as we moved along that initial idea, we found some bits and pieces that were not necessarily fully aligned with the reality out there. So our new motto during the last year and a half is that we are a digital toolkit for wine professionals. And gradually we're transitioning in providing much more tangible solutions, some of them actually providing necessary infrastructure for compliance for the winemakers, but also adding a layer of professional services, because something that we found out quite early in the process was that even though our ideas were solid and what we were creating could potentially provide value, the necessary skill set and people were not present in the clients, in the wineries and the winemakers. So coming back to sort of, the purple idea, we need to bridge that gap, right? We cannot do it solely by providing our technology. We need to provide our expertise and services to the industry. So this is sort of an initial journey. We've been doing that for the last, let's say, 5 years. We're entering the 5th year of operations.
Okay.
So we've already transitioned a couple of times.
Yeah, some small, let's say, not pivots actually, but new layers that you have identified that.
It's flexibility and adapting to the actual environment. That's the idea always.
Yeah. Exactly. So, what's the main problem? What's the pain point for the wine producers and the wine businesses that you found, and you say that, okay, this is the hypothesis, we see the gap, and this is the gap, and what's the problem actually that you are facing?
The initiating the original idea, let's say, was targeted around sort of the digital presence of the wineries, right? And this is not something that is specific to the wine industry. Inevitably, all new businesses need to live in a digital ecosystem as well as a physical one. In a lot of cases, they need to live predominantly in the digital ecosystem rather than the physical one. So as part of that journey, one of the things that some of the founding team has also witnessed on its own through past experiences is that you lack the necessary information to understand who's doing well out there, what are the best practices, and what you should be doing to become successful. Focusing solely on your own, let's say, analytics and data is not a good idea, because you're only evaluating yourself against yourself. You need to somehow identify who is actually killing it out there.
Exactly.
Try to figure out exactly what they're doing and potentially replicate that for your own success. So that was the original idea. I mean, when we got started, we created an initial database of something like 150 Greek wineries, a small subset of the market here. And we started on a weekly basis monitoring how they were doing on Facebook, Instagram, and Vivino. Observing key metrics, so the likes of the number of followers, or the posts that they were having, or sort of the engagement that they were getting, or in the case of Vivino, the number of reviews that were actually out there on them. And from that initial data set, we started compiling effectively sort of a small championship board, right? Who's winning on a week-by-week basis or on a month-by-month basis. And this is truly important, because you immediately see patterns around that. You see people who are simply, posting pictures rather than others who are actually posting some stories behind the pictures, or people who are actually running competitions online to lure in additional followers, etc. So that was the initial concept. That's where we got started, let's say, to begin with.
And you started building this, with a small, as you said, portion of the Greek market.
Correct.
And what are you finally provide? What's the solution?
So the original solution, which is called Insights, that's the original name of it, is effectively a business intelligence platform provided in a software as a service model, where these days we have two, let's say, distinct sub-products within that platform. On one end, we provide intelligence for the digital presence of wineries and their competitors. And by the way, now we cover the entire Greek market, and we've already started compiling a similar database targeting the top 100, 150 wineries on a global scale, where we capture the digital presence across several social mediums. And at the same time, we're also capturing on a weekly basis the paid campaigns they run on those mediums as well. So one can enter and immediately understand who's killing it, as I mentioned before. Dive deeper into their profiles to understand exactly how they do it, but at the same time also have a clear view of what is their paid campaign process, strategy, and their actual campaign. So we capture things like, the full creative, images, videos, the text. The whole thing is available as a database. So that's one element of the platform. The second element has to do with international trade, which is something that came about following interactions with clients. So we saw that exports is a main area of interest for them, and they were severely lacking on up-to-date information. They usually had information about what happened last year. What we've done during the last 3 years is that we've tapped directly into several databases that are available out there. And especially in the case of Europe, we can have up-to-date information within the running year, usually with a time delay of a couple of months. So we can provide them sort of a real-time, in quotation marks, information about how exports evolve within the year that we're running, and give them insights such as, countries where exports are increasing substantially, or countries where they are decreasing substantially versus last year, or specific types of products that are actually doing well or not. And the last thing that we did sort of 2 years ago is that we started digitally capturing articles, information, everything that's available out there on the web, specifically for the Greek market, but we also have a similar product for the global market as well, where we capture the information, we properly tag the information, so at any point in time you can see articles that refer to yourself, if you're a winemaker, that refer to some of your competitors specifically. You can identify trends, which are becoming quite clear when you have that type of data set. So this is the offering for the Insights platform. Now, on top of the Insights platform, during the last 5 years, we have developed a very specific solution. Hence, we are now a toolkit. We're not only Insights. We have developed a very specific solution for a unique for the time being issue within the EU, which is a compliance issue for the winemakers, having to do with legislation around digital wine labels. So we have a flexible QR tag platform, which caters to the needs of those digital labels, as well as to any usage of QR codes in things like wine tourism. And in addition to that, we offer the professional services now. So this is something during the last year and a half.
Okay, so let me ask you, I can truly understand that there is a need for the compliance as a regulation, and everybody has to follow it. But do the traditional Greek wine business owners can understand the value of the insights, or do they have the people in their teams to do it?
Not necessarily, and this is directly sort of leading us to the professional services road, right? So it's to some extent inevitable, and I would say that it's a good practice, right? I mean, if you can prove that your product can bring value, putting your own people at task, then number one, you've proven your case. Number two, as part of that process, you increase your understanding of the domain, and you also build better solutions, right? Because you're part of the solution. You're using your own solutions in the field. So I think it's a good practice. Even if we didn't have to do it, I would still consider sort of co-building and co-involving projects and products as an intrinsic necessity of startups. You need to tie yourself with some good clients in order to be closer to them and better understand what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Was it easy for you to enter and acquire the first customers, or it was because of your partner to enter? Because it's a little bit tricky to talk about, of course, data, technology on one of the most traditional spaces.
Interestingly enough, we actually issued our first invoice probably within a month of initiating the first tests.
Ooh.
That was sort of a false positive, to be brutally honest. But we did get it, right? So somebody saw the necessity and actually went ahead and ordered something from us. Back then we didn't even have the platform, right? He came back and we actually created sort of a bespoke report for them. It's been, a lengthy road. There's a process behind it. So we've been at it for the last 5 years. As I mentioned, we started invoicing people straight ahead. But, an invoice here, an invoice there, not a mass market approach. The compliance element assisted us in opening more doors, right? Because they were open to discussing something that they knew that they needed. As part of that, and as part of opening the doors, and obviously as part of becoming part of their weekly routine, because one of the things that we've never stopped since the initiation is sending them on a weekly basis a newsletter containing both original content coming from us, as well as industry news and things that make sense. You gradually open the doors, right? And it's also truly important when you open the doors to identify key clients that are more open to adopting change and digitization. And as I mentioned before, working hand in hand with them to build a proper relationship, better understand what the true need is, and gradually putting that into the product pipeline.
Yep. And the loop, actually, because if you are talking a software as a service, it's a subscription, so...
Correct.
And up to that, they have to pay for the professional services.
Correct. The professional services are according to the professional services model, right? I mean, it's a contract identifying specific types of tasks that you need to undertake, and usually this also for us is sort of on a lengthier, let's say, commitment. I mean, we don't do professional services on a month-by-month basis. When we choose to collaborate with a winery, we truly believe that it's a partnership. So we work together, for at least a year. Because you need that also to bring in the results, right? This is not something, we don't have a magic wand that we can wave and suddenly within a couple of weeks, change everything.
Being in this specific niche market for the last 5 years, what you have identified as some patterns, or to share that this is the kind of people that you have to talk, or this is difficult, or if you want to service this kind of specific market, what you need to have on your mind?
To be honest, I don't think that this differs on a market-by-market basis, right? I mean, after a while, I think when you initiate a conversation with someone, you can quickly identify whether you click or not. That's step number one. When you have a certain service or offer to make, you also can very quickly identify how close they are to understanding it to begin with or not. And these are two crucial elements, right? Because if you don't click with the person on the other end of the line, you're not going to necessarily be able to proceed. If they're not at a maturity level to understand what you're putting on the table, forcing it is not an option. It will never work. I mean, one of the things that I've understood and learned, let's say, through several experiences in the past is that you cannot preempt a market. The market is either there or not. What you can do is, if you have enough money, to gradually build the market. But if the market is not there, you will not be able to magically preempt it.
Tell us more about the market.
As far as the size or the characteristics, I mean, in the case of wineries,
the size and
in the case of wineries, I mean, it's a clearly defined market, right? I mean, in Greece, in theory, we have something like 1,500 wineries.
About, yeah.
Officially registered.
And what are the sales? What are the sales that they made? I mean, how big is the market that you are right now and you are servicing with the solution?
That's a bit trickier because obviously the market that we are servicing doesn't have anything to do with the actual revenues that these wineries have.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
I mean,
it's a very specific.
In the case of
exactly that you said.
In the case of insights, if you want to approach it, you know, in a fashion like that, you could say that you're trying to get portion of their marketing budget, because effectively, sort of the initial approach was that we're providing you a solution that will make you better at being, you know, digital marketeers. Hence, sort of the size of the prize over there cannot exceed can only be a portion of what they're actually setting aside for that activity. We gradually move to the international trade, the exports. Over there, they have a different, let's say, pot of budget. So it's not an easy question to answer because we're not tapping into the revenue of the industry as a whole.
But as you know, of course, you know, if you make a turnover of an X amount, then a Z amount is the market, has to be the marketing.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. I mean, I've had this discussion again and again. My rule of thumb is that you need to set aside at the very least a 10% on marketing. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, remember, we're talking about an industry.
You have seen too many people that are investing more?
More, I wouldn't say, less by definition. And keep in mind that in a lot of cases, you need to take into account the whole structure of that market. Some of the top wineries indeed have proper marketing budgets to go out there and promote their brand.
So it's not only on the...
Quite a lot of them might rely on distributors. So if they take sort of the burden of promoting, in a lot of cases, those distributors might be retail points aware as well. So say that you're selling to a supermarket, either under your own brand or under sort of a white label model. So the marketing budget is effectively distributed across several players over there. I would say that what we did as an initial sort of strategic and commercial approach was to identify the market as far as the size, and that's easy to do. I mean, you can have a clear information about how many wineries you have in Greece, in Italy, in Spain, in the US, etc. You can throw in some ballpark assumptions over there, and you can make a couple of multiplications to reach, you know, a number. But effectively, and this is my gut instinct, the size of the market as far as the entity is concerned is a key and crucial factor. Internally, and I will not share that, we have a goal. We have a goal that says that, you know, in a couple of years' time, we would like to have an X amount of revenue per winery. And we've done those calculations internally. Fortunately or unfortunately, this is not something that we can easily derive either from their core revenues or from the marketing budget right now. It's more of a rule of thumb approach on what makes sense, especially after we started talking with them, seeing their operations and understanding. Because even if you can prove, which is debatable, that what they're going to invest in you is going to have 100% or 150% return on investment, even in that case, if they're not ready to accept a certain amount, you can't put it in front of them.
So you create the market.
Yeah.
Yep. And it takes long. I mean,
By definition.
You need to educate.
Yeah.
You need to invest first yourself. So yeah, it's another approach.
And it's a matter of, I would say, sort of preference, or what each of us wants to do. I mean, I've been in other industries in the past. I've played different games in the past.
You prefer this one?
I ended up, understanding that this is the kind of game that I love to play. I want to create something that truly brings value to the end user, and I want to do that by having a close relationship with the end user. I mean, I love talking to them. I love going out, meeting them on the wineries, understanding exactly what their pain points are on a day-to-day basis, and trying to gradually bring them back in. And as part of the process, we gradually sort of expand the scope as well. I mean, one of the things that has happened during the last year and a half, stemming predominantly from the QR solution that we have developed, we've started talking more and more with enologists, which are effectively sort of the
part of the
business, but a different type of stakeholder. And we've started building a relationship with them, and we're seeing that there's also room to create products specific to that domain, which could potentially be applicable, to a grander scale than even what we had in the beginning. So I don't think that you need to capture everything in the beginning. You need to stick with something that you love to do
and work.
Ideally, find a market that has potential. That's crucial. I mean, if it's oversaturated, if there's a lot of competition, it's going to be tricky. But if you find such a market, you need to work your way through it.
So, being on this market, and for sure, the Greek market, it seems to have a growth on the wine industry. Is it something that you believe, or is it your goal to upscale and help the Greek wineries to double their exports, their revenues?
Well,
are you the company that you're gonna make it?
There's a tricky point on that, which is the following. It has to do with the general environment where we operate in.
Yeah.
And has to do with the production of the core material, right? So we can't double that because the production is actually falling during the last couple of years, right? And especially with the latest changes in climate,
weather.
On a global scale, it's
production is less.
Yeah, it's being pressured to a large extent. It sort of balances out since it becomes more expensive. So on a total revenue basis, you can say that the wine industry is even growing to some extent. But the actual core material is an issue, right? I would say that for the time being, we're not in the business of doubling or tripling their revenues. We're in the business of assisting them making better decisions and gradually providing them specific tools that can make their day-to-day lives easier. And also on a conscious level, we haven't tapped into the whole commercial level element of the product itself. So we're not touching sort of the sales of wine on its own. We're not building a marketplace. We're not doing anything of that sort.
And any thoughts on that, or not yet? Or there are others, and you are focused on?
I mean, there are quite interesting players on that front. Vivino is a good example. Right?
It's a social media platform.
Vivino is a social media platform, but at the same time,
they've started in marketplace.
Potentially is a marketplace as well, right? Yeah. As part of their business model, they include the notion of buying within Vivino. I'm not sure how well it's done for them.
Or do you count them as competitors? Because for sure they have insights. They know, they gather reviews, they gather sales.
Correct.
do you count them as competitors, or there are some others that you could say that these are our direct competitors?
I would say that, direct competitors I've seen far and few between. I could potentially name 2 or 3 companies on a global basis. Vivino, as a byproduct of what they have, indeed have access to an immense database. And they've actually tried selling it as a service to wineries. Their prices were exorbitant, at least for the Greek market. I mean, we've seen them and we've talked to people where they try to sell it. I'm not sure if they're still, heavily promoting it or not, to be honest. But indeed, they have a very unique data set. That's for sure.
That's the unique value proposition.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay, so talking about competitors and the market, how do you see the future of this market?
I mean, I think the wine industry is here to stay. Obviously, it will undergo a substantial transformation
Due to the climate.
If the change of the climate continues, and we're already seeing sort of the byproducts of that, you're going to see a geographic shift. I mean, there's already discussion about the whole sort of production shifting to northern climates. Countries where a couple of years ago were considered, non-players in the market, gradually have a climate which could be perfect for it. You also see varietals traveling across different fronts. I mean, interestingly enough, we had an article, we captured an article about that a couple of months ago. People from the region of Provence in France actually traveled here in Greece because their climate now becomes more and more like ours. And they selected a couple of Greek varietals that suits their type of winemaking, and they will initiate tests on the region.
And we also have seen some other players, like countries that weren't, let's say, traditional players, like Asia. Asia, it's something that they are developing vineyards.
I mean, obviously, China is trying to enter that market. There's also an interesting sort of trade war that happened, at least for the last couple of years, between them and Australia.
Australia.
Yeah, but they actually shifted removed the restrictions during the last couple of months. But yeah, they have an immense region to cover. They have the potential to replicate business concepts and models, as we've seen, in several other types of businesses. Interestingly enough, and that's potentially going to be at play here, inevitably we're going to start seeing some sort of consolidation in the winemaking.
We have started
process.
Seeing that a little bit.
Correct. We've been seeing it
players.
Both on a global scale, as well as in the Greek market. You gradually see some of the top players to move further than the originating region. Actually, interestingly enough, and this is yesterday's news, one of the big players in the Greek market, which is called the Alpha Estate, yesterday announced that they bought the old winery, specifically the winery, not the vineyards, of Boutari, which is also a big and old name in the Greek market, in Santorini, which is big news. And you see several of the big players gradually covering several regions within the Greek, let's say, location. But for sure, we're going to see that. We've also seen, let's say, Greek winemakers sort of consulting Chinese winemakers. It's a trade, right? I mean, there are certain places where trade...
The whole world, So, as we are talking about the whole world, what are your thoughts? When are you entering new markets? As right now, you are in Greece, you have customers here.
Correct.
So, and you have tasted the global market, but when are you gonna move to be the focus, acquire customers in other countries and run?
I mean, we initiated testing on a global scale a year and a half ago. So we started sort of replicating the business model exactly as it started in Greece. We're seeing the exact same response, which is good news. So, our hypothesis that if we do it in Greece, we have a business model
for other countries.
For other countries, seems to be a valid one. We've also initiated some media connections. So as part of what we do in the original content that we create, we have appeared in quite substantial publications abroad. Actually, this time last year, a major UK publication on the wine business actually asked us to create a UK-specific analysis for international trade, for the imports of wine in the UK, because they couldn't get that data locally. So we're ready to move ahead. Inevitably, we still have, I would say, year and a half focusing here on the Greek market to really build a solid basis. And one of the things that we're currently sort of debating and discussing internally is the exact model of expansion. One option is to actually do it sort of organically. The other would be via a network of local integrators, resellers, etc. We still haven't made the final decision on that. Both are valid models.
Okay. And jumping to the debate side, who are the stakeholders? I mean, who are the members of the team? Tell us more about the team.
So the team consists of Kostas Labropoulos, who is also coming from a technical and digital entrepreneurship background. Maria Kefala, who is our liaison and connection with the wine business. And myself, who I'm also coming, let's say, from a technology and digital entrepreneurship background. So this is the core team that got started.
And are you break-even so far? Are you bootstrapping?
We are bootstrapping from the get-go. This year, we're going to be fully cash positive.
Oh, wow. And what are the next steps? Are you going to raise? Are you looking for strategic investors? What are your thoughts on that?
As far as this is an open-ended question, right? I mean, there's no precondition on something like that. I would say that as the basic appetite, we, do not see the immediate need to raise money. We're always open for a strategic discussion. I mean, if there is a proper match, then this becomes quite interesting.
So you are very open to discussions?
As one should, I think, in any type of business, right? We're doing something that we like, seems to be successful, and we're always on the lookout, for opportunities to network, to share our thoughts and ideas with other people, and to see whether we can collaborate with them.
Talking about insights, and as you have a deep knowledge on what's going on, and having seen, wealthy people like Yannis Antetokounmpo acquiring a stake of a wine business here in Greece, and some other people from different sectors like shipping magnates getting stakes on the wine industry. What do you believe that why they are doing that?
I think it's not only the wine industry. I mean, the alcohol business, let's say in whole, seems to be providing them with substantial returns on investment. As simple as that. And you see that not only in wine, in tequila, in gin, in things like that. I mean, the examples are out there, right? So it's an attractive business, obviously based on the return on investment.
What are we waiting on the future on the wine industry? I mean, are we waiting new varieties? Are you waiting new things?
I mean, the trends that we see, because we're always on the lookout and through the process of capturing information and articles, we see sort of the flowing trends. There is a whole debate right now on who, sustains that business and whether it's older generations versus younger ones. There's always the competition to actually bring in new consumers. There's definitely some pressure as far as the health element of this equation. So things like no alcohol wines or low alcohol wines are definitely trends that we're going to see again and again.
And different packaging as well.
Different packaging as well. So, wine in a can. This is something that has been happening for the last couple of years. There's a huge debate on whether it affects, taste or not. But inevitably, it's, especially the canned wine is, in my mind, part of the process of trying to acquire a younger generation of consumers.
And the same thing about non-alcoholic wine, maybe.
Yeah, the non-alcoholic
other
wine
markets
is potentially a broader trend.
Product, yeah. And what about the climate? And if you've seen some trends that wineries are looking for ways to, of course, to acquire other businesses or to get grapes in other varieties, blah blah blah, in other places. But are they following not only about the compliance, but about any strategy about being more environmental friendly, or have you seen that?
No, that
Is it the trend or is it the reality?
That's an interesting question, and actually, sort of a new project that I got started literally 2 months ago is a different platform which caters to the notion of smart agriculture. So yeah, that's a huge trend, right? Inevitably moving ahead, we're going to have, on one end, climate change, which inevitably will mean that we're going to have fewer resources as far as water, for example, is concerned. So this inevitably will affect the way that grapes are cultivated. I'm not the most knowledgeable person on that front, but as part of the discussion that we have both with winemakers as well as enologists these days, there's a huge debate over there.
And maybe the reports that they are getting, and the insights that they're getting.
Correct. But this is something that is moving at a faster pace than expected, right? That's the sort of consensus among all people. I mean, things that we were expecting or that they were expecting to see happen in a 10-year time frame seem to be happening in a year or two. So there's going to be extreme pressure on that front and potential opportunities to actually provide, solutions over there.
Okay, and let's, as we're closing, let's go to where we started and tell us about the stack that you're using.
The stack that we are using, highly depending on open source technologies, and also highly leveraging either low code or no code platforms to accelerate the initial phase of testing new ideas. I mean, that for me is a given and absolute must. You need to be able to quickly materialize an idea that you have into a viable proposition, not necessarily receiving revenue from it, but being able to test it in the field. And in addition to that, something that we did from the get-go, and for me is an absolute must in any type of business, is having a rock-solid marketing technology stack. I mean, you need to have some core elements over there, both as far as a type of CRM, but also as far as some core elements that allow you to produce content, distribute it, and use it as a mechanism to actually get feedback within your commercial process.
Awesome. And let's go to the last question. And I would like to ask you about the favorite quote, or what makes you to continue building and continue, being on this industry.
I wouldn't give it a specific quote. I mean, I think to some extent, we are all pre-wired to do something.
Okay.
Regardless of, our life choices and paths. I always loved creating, building things, whether it was, playing with a Lego set when I was young. When I entered sort of the university and decided to study computer sciences, was because I love to, code, to create a program that does something at the end. So that's sort of my pre-wiring. I cannot escape that.
That's awesome. So, Elias, a big thank you about your insights and about you and the knowledge that I believe that we can give to the people to understand what's going on, what you're doing, what's the vision, and what are you working on insights.
No, thank you so much for the invitation, and I think it's truly important to share, experiences. Perhaps they might help, somebody else. That's a notion here.
Awesome. I would like to wish you best luck.
Thank you so much.
And see you soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Thanos.
Thank you.